Do you know what the scariest thing about life is? It's not failure. It's not poverty. It's waking up one day and realizing you've been living far below your true potential for far too long. What's truly frightening is it doesn't happen overnight. It begins with very small choices. One moment of procrastination, one time giving up, one time telling yourself, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And then years pass, you're still alive, but you no longer feel like you're truly moving forward anymore. Some people don't lack potential. They've just lived too long being too comfortable with themselves. Tonight I want to talk to you about the silent laws that determine why some people grow stronger as they live, while others slowly lose themselves even though they're still trying. And stay until the end of the video, because there's one law that, if understood too late, will make you look back on your entire life with regret. There's something most people take many years to truly understand. Life never gives you anything for free. Every choice has its price. Even when you don't choose, you're still paying a price. That's what surprises many people the most. They think standing still is safe, that procrastinating a little longer is fine, that if they're not ready yet, they can just wait a little more. But life doesn't work that way, because time doesn't stop just because you're hesitating. The seasons still change, opportunities still pass by, people still grow old, and the most dangerous part is, everything happens very quietly. No one hears the sound of life taking away their potential. It doesn't make loud noises. It just silently happens through days that all look the same. I once knew a man like that. He wasn't the type who failed from the beginning. On the contrary, he used to be very ambitious. There were years when he stayed up late reading books, talking about big plans, talking about the life he would build, talking about how he would change everything. But then life started getting in the way. A job that exhausted him more than expected. A few small failures. A few times losing motivation. A few times telling himself, I'll do it tomorrow. And strangely, life didn't punish him immediately. That's what makes people become careless most easily. Because when you miss one workout, your body doesn't weaken immediately. When you delay an opportunity, your life doesn't collapse immediately. When you break a promise to yourself once, everything still seems normal. But the problem is, those little things begin to accumulate. Like water dripping onto stone. On the first day, nothing changes. But many years later, the entire shape of the stone is different. People are the same way. What shapes your life is rarely one big decision. It's usually the small choices repeated for too long. One time choosing what's easy instead of what's right. One time staying silent instead of facing reality. One time staying where you are because you're afraid of change. And then little by little, you begin becoming a smaller version of yourself. The most painful part is that most people don't realize it while it's happening. They only feel life gradually becoming heavier, waking up each morning with less motivation, less hope, less belief in themselves, but they don't know exactly what took those things away from them. The truth is, life didn't take it away all at once. They traded it away little by little for temporary comfort. You see, comfort always has a powerful attraction. It's like a soft chair in a dark room. Sitting down is easy, very comfortable, very safe. But if you sit there too long, you'll forget where you once wanted to go. And some people spend their entire youth avoiding discomfort. They avoid learning more because they're tired. Avoid starting because they fear failure. Avoid change because they fear losing stability. But at a certain age, they begin realizing a painful truth. The pain of discipline is always lighter than the pain of regret, because discipline hurts for a moment, but regret can stay with you for the rest of your life. I think that's why many older people become silent when talking about the past. Not because they have no stories to tell, but because there are things that still hurt when remembered. The opportunities they didn't take, the potential they once had, the better versions of themselves that they ultimately never became. And do you know the saddest part? Very few people truly fail because they lack ability. Most fail because they live too long in procrastination. They think they still have time, but time is the one thing that once lost can never return. Money can be earned again. Health can sometimes recover. Relationships can sometimes be repaired. But once a year is gone, it's gone forever. That's why I've always believed one of the most important skills of adulthood is learning to see time as an investment. Not something to kill, not something to wait through, but something that is silently building the person you're becoming. Because every day you live, you're paying for something. The only question is, are you paying to build your future or paying for your own procrastination? And then I realized there's something even more powerful than choice. It's the things we repeat every day. I used to think people's lives changed because of big moments. One major decision, one huge breakthrough, one day full of motivation. But the longer I live, the more I realize that what truly creates a person is the things they repeat every single day. Not what you do once, but what you return to often enough until it becomes your nature. That's how everything is built. A person doesn't become confident just by reading a few motivational quotes. They become confident by doing difficult things many times and proving to themselves over and over that, I can do this. A person doesn't become disciplined just because they feel motivated. Discipline is formed during very ordinary days. Days no one sees, no one applauds, no inspiration, no strong emotions, but they still do what needs to be done. You see, life always watches what you repeat. If you repeat procrastination, you'll become a person who always procrastinates. If you repeat avoidance, you'll gradually become someone afraid to face things. If you repeatedly break promises to yourself, eventually, even you will stop believing your own words. And I think that's one of humanity's quietest tragedies. Not poverty, not failure, but losing faith in yourself. Some people still smile and laugh normally on the outside, but deep inside, they no longer believe they can truly change their lives anymore because they've given up too many times, started too many times, made too many promises, and then stopped halfway through again. Every time that happens, a part of their self-trust wears away a little more. Like a rope being pulled too many times. It doesn't snap immediately, but eventually, it's no longer strong enough. I once met a man who worked in a small woodworking shop. He wasn't rich, not famous, and there was nothing particularly special about him from the outside. But there's one thing I'll never forget. Every day he arrived at the workshop very early. No one had to remind him. No one had to check on him. He just quietly did his work. Every cut was careful. Every detail was precise. I once asked him, "Why are you so meticulous?" It's not like everyone notices. He just smiled and said something I remembered for a very long time. The way you repeat things is the kind of person you'll eventually become. Only later did I fully understand what he meant. People don't change in explosive moments. We change through small things repeated long enough. Like water dripping onto stone. Not powerful, not loud, but persistent. And then one day, even stone changes shape. Do you know why many people never go far in life? Not because they lack ability, but because they always live based on temporary emotions. If they feel motivated, they work. If they're tired, they rest. If it gets too hard, they quit. The problem is, life doesn't reward emotions. It rewards repetition. That's why some people seem very ordinary, but 10 years later, their lives are completely different. Not because they're geniuses, but because they maintain small actions long enough, reading a few pages every day, learning a little more every day, keeping one more promise to themselves each day. It sounds small, but life is built from small things like that. I've always believed the way you do small things is the way you live your entire life. Because character doesn't appear in big speeches. It reveals itself in moments no one sees. When you're tired but still do what needs to be done. When you're disappointed but still keep your promise. When you have no motivation but continue anyway. That's when your real self is formed. And the interesting thing is, when you repeat an action long enough, it no longer feels like effort. It becomes identity. A person who has exercised for years is no longer trying to work out. That's simply who they are. A person who is always on time doesn't force themselves to be punctual. That's the standard they live by. A person who always keeps their word doesn't struggle to do so. Their character's been built that way. That's the true power of repetition. It doesn't just change results. It changes who you are. And once your identity changes, your life begins changing direction very quickly. But unfortunately, this law works for both good and bad things. If you repeat laziness long enough, laziness becomes your nature. If you repeat quitting long enough, you'll begin believing you're the type of person who always quits. That's why you must be extremely careful about the things you do every day, because every repeated action is silently casting a vote for the person you'll become in the future. And then I realized there are many people out there working extremely hard, but heading in the wrong direction. There's a truth many people don't want to hear. Hard work alone is not enough. I know that sounds difficult to accept, because ever since we were young, we were taught that if you just keep trying, everything will work out. But life is far more practical than that. If you're heading in the wrong direction, the harder you try, the farther you move away from where you truly want to go. That's what exhausts so many people. Not because they're lazy, but because they've spent too much energy building a life that deep down they never truly wanted. You can see it in many adults. On the outside, they seem fine. They have jobs, income, a daily routine, but their eyes no longer have light in them. They live like someone dragging themselves through life. No excitement left. No feeling that they're moving towards something meaningful. Just continuing because they no longer know how to stop and choose another direction. I once met a man in his 40s. He worked extremely hard, the kind of person everyone looks at and thinks, this guy is definitely going to succeed. He woke up very early, worked long hours, rarely rested. But one time he told me something I never forgot. He said, I spent nearly half my life climbing a ladder only to realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. I think many people are living exactly like that. They're still climbing, working very hard, but they've never truly stopped to ask themselves, where am I going? You see, some people don't fail because they lack effort. They fail because they never truly chose a direction for themselves. They've lived too long according to other people's expectations, according to fear, according to pressure, according to society's definition of success, until one day they have everything they once thought would make them happy, yet they still don't feel happy. That kind of exhaustion is hard to explain because it's not physical exhaustion. It's the exhaustion of the soul, like there's a part inside you constantly saying, this is not the life I truly want. The problem is, many people are afraid to change direction, not because they don't know they're heading the wrong way, but because they're afraid to admit that they've already spent too much time on this path. But listen to me carefully. Continuing in the wrong direction does not make the past years more worthwhile. It only costs you even more years. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is not trying harder. It's stopping long enough to be honest with themselves. What do I truly want? What makes me feel alive? Am I building my own life or living to meet other people's expectations? Those are difficult questions because they force you to look directly at the truth. And the truth is sometimes painful. A lot of people are busy but not truly moving anywhere. They wake up, go to work, feel exhausted, distract themselves to forget the exhaustion, sleep, then repeat it all again. Years pass, and their lives remain the same, not because they lack intelligence, but because their energy is scattered everywhere, a little for worrying, a little for procrastination, a little for pleasing other people, a little for things that don't truly matter. And in the end, they no longer have enough energy left for their own lives. Do you know what happens when sunlight is scattered? It's just ordinary light. But when sunlight is focused on one point, it can create fire. Human beings are the same way. When you learn to focus your time, your attention, and your energy in the right direction, everything begins changing very quickly. Not instantly, but enough for you to feel that your life is moving. It's a very different feeling. You no longer wake up just to get through the day. You begin feeling that everything you do has meaning. Even on difficult days, you still feel yourself moving forward. And the interesting thing is, when your direction is right, you don't need to become a perfect machine. You don't need to feel motivated all the time. You just need to keep going, because effort in the right direction compounds over time, like a farmer planting during the right season. Looking at it every day, you may not see anything changing, but beneath the ground, roots are growing, and then one day, everything rises very quickly. That's how personal growth truly happens. Quietly, slowly, but very precisely. And then I realized there's something even more dangerous than going in the wrong direction. It's when you begin accepting a life beneath your true potential. I want you to remember this. Your life will ultimately be limited not by what you desire, but by what you tolerate. It's a very silent law, but it's deciding almost everything in your life right now. What you tolerate in your work, what you tolerate in relationships, what you tolerate from yourself, all of it is creating an invisible ceiling for your life. And the scariest part is, most people don't realize that ceiling is slowly getting lower. No one wakes up and suddenly becomes mediocre. People decline very slowly, little by little, one time being lenient with themselves, one time ignoring what they know is wrong, one time accepting a lower standard of living than what they truly want. Then those moments start becoming habits. Do you know what happens when someone lives too long in comfort and leniency? They begin forgetting that a stronger version of themselves ever existed. That's what I see in many people. At first, they still feel uncomfortable when they procrastinate, still feel guilty when they break promises to themselves, still feel pain when living beneath their potential. But if that continues for too long, the pain disappears. And that's when the real danger begins. Because when you no longer feel uncomfortable living below your standards, you begin treating it as normal. Some people spend years living a life that deep down they know they don't belong in. But because they've gotten used to it, they continue. Used to procrastinating, used to lacking discipline, used to always saying, "I guess this is good enough." You see, human beings can adapt to almost anything, even a life that doesn't make them happy. That's why some people seem fine on the outside, but inside they gave up a long time ago. They no longer truly believe they can change anymore, not because they don't want to, but because they've accepted too many things beneath their true potential. I once saw that happen to an old friend. When he was younger, he was very different, full of energy, full of dreams, talking about the future with bright eyes. But life didn't go the way he wanted. A few failures, a few rejections, a few years where nothing progressed, and then he began to change. Not in a dramatic way, just he began accepting less effort, less hope, less belief in himself, a little more each year, until one day I saw him again, and what saddened me most wasn't that he still hadn't succeeded. It was that the light in his eyes was gone, as if life had taught him, don't expect too much. And do you know what hurts the most? A lot of people out there are living exactly like that. Not completely failing, but not truly living anymore either. Just existing, just repeating, just dragging themselves through each day. That's what happens when you spend too long accepting a life beneath what you could truly become. I think that's why discipline matters so much. Not because discipline makes you look strong, but because discipline is how you tell yourself, "I refuse to live beneath my potential anymore." Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you raise the standard of your life a little higher. Every time you do the hard thing instead of the easy thing, you break down the old ceiling. Every time you stop tolerating procrastination, a stronger version of yourself begins to appear. It's not an instant dramatic transformation. It's like the sunrise. Slow, silent, but unstoppable. And the interesting thing is, when your internal standards change, many things around you begin changing too. Old relationships no longer fit. Environments that pull you down begin feeling suffocating. Meaningless conversations exhaust you. Because true growth doesn't just change results, it changes what you're willing to tolerate. You cannot build a strong life while continuing to tolerate habits that destroy you every day. You cannot become a greater version of yourself if you keep negotiating with comfort and ease. And remember this, what determines your future is not the goals you write down. It's the standards you accept living with every day. Because in the end, life always gives you the version that matches what you are willing to tolerate. And then I realized, true personal growth begins when a person stops negotiating with themselves. I think there's a very important moment in every person's life. It's when they become tired of continuing to betray themselves. Tired of making promises and then quitting. Tired of starting over and then stopping again. Tired of always knowing they could do better, but still returning to the same old habits. Do you know what exhausts a person the most? It's not working too hard. It's the feeling that inside, there's always a battle that never truly ends. One part of you knows you could become more than this, but another part keeps pulling you back toward comfort and ease. And if that battle goes on for too long, people begin losing their energy for life. Not because they're weak, but because they no longer believe they'll truly change anymore. I've experienced that feeling before. The feeling of waking up in the morning with hundreds of good intentions in your mind. Then by nightfall, feeling disappointed in yourself again. At first you think, tomorrow I'll be different. But when that repeats too many times, those words begin losing their weight. That's when self-trust begins to break apart. And I realized something very important. Personal growth does not begin with motivation. It begins with honesty. True growth begins the day you become honest enough to look at your life and say, I can't keep living like this anymore. No blaming, no excuses, no more negotiating with procrastination. Just quietly looking directly at yourself. That is a very powerful moment. Because from that moment on, real change can finally begin. You see, many people think discipline means forcing yourself to do hard things. But the longer I live, the more I believe discipline is actually a form of self-respect. It's how you tell yourself, I deserve a better life than the habits I currently have. When you wake up early, even though you desperately want more sleep, that's not just discipline, that's self-respect. When you keep a promise to yourself, even though no one knows, that's not just responsibility. That's how you rebuild trust within yourself. When you continue doing the right thing on days with no motivation, that's when character is formed. I think the biggest problem most people have is that they always wait for feelings to come first. They want to feel ready before they act. But life rarely works that way. Farmers don't wait for inspiration before planting seeds. Craftsmen don't wait for the perfect mood before working. And mature people don't wait for emotions before living according to what they know they need to do. That's a huge transformation from living according to moods to living according to standards, because emotions always change. But standards are what shape your life. I once read somewhere that, for many years, bamboo barely grows above the ground. If you looked with your eyes alone, you would think nothing was happening. But beneath the soil, its roots are spreading very deep. I think personal growth is the same way. There are periods where you feel like you're trying so hard, but your life still hasn't changed much. You still haven't succeeded, still haven't achieved major results, still haven't seen things break through. And that's when many people quit. They think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe all this effort is pointless. But sometimes, what's happening is simply that the roots are still growing. Character is being built. Discipline is being formed. Self-trust is being repaired little by little. Those things don't make loud noises. But once they become strong enough, your entire life will begin changing direction. That's why I've always believed. Never underestimate small changes. One day of keeping your word. One morning of waking up earlier. One time refusing to quit halfway through. It sounds small, but that's how a new person is created. No one changes their life overnight. People change through hundreds of very ordinary days where they decide not to return to the old version of themselves anymore. And then one day, you look back at who you were a few years ago and barely recognize that person anymore. Not because you became perfect, but because finally you learned how to stand on your own side. And that's when everything truly begins changing. Because when a person starts believing in themselves again, they become very hard to stop. And then I realized everything in life eventually leads back to one very simple question. Who are you becoming through the things you do every day? There's something I really want you to think about tonight. The version of you 5 years from now is being created right now. Not on some special day in the future. Not when you're more ready. Not when everything is perfect. But today, through the way you think, through the things you repeat, through what you tolerate, and through very small decisions that seem unimportant. You see, people often think life changes through big moments. But most of life is built during very ordinary days. One morning you decide to wake up earlier. One day you refuse to quit halfway through. One time you choose to do the right thing, even though it's difficult. There's no dramatic music, no cinematic moment, just one small choice. But enough small choices like that eventually create two completely different lives. I think many young people don't understand the power of time. They think they have many years ahead of them. And yes, when you're young, time always feels endless. 1 year passing doesn't seem like much. But then time begins speeding up. The seasons pass more quickly. People grow older faster. And opportunities that once felt wide open begin slowly closing. The frightening part is, most people don't realize it while it's happening. They keep thinking, one day I'll change, one day I'll get serious, one day I'll start. But someday is where a lot of potential gets buried. Because in the end, life always asks you one question. What did you do with the time you were given? Not what you intended to do, but what you actually did. I once sat talking with an older man in a small cafe. He stared out the window for a long time before saying, "What hurts me most is not the times I failed, but the things I never did." That sentence stayed in my mind for a very long time. Because I realized, most people are not haunted by failure. They're haunted by unused potential. By the version of themselves they could have become. That kind of regret is very quiet. No one sees it, but it stays with a person for a very long time. Do you know what truly creates a beautiful life? Not money, not fame, not how successful other people think you are, but the feeling inside that says, I did not betray myself. I think that is true peace. Knowing you did your best to live according to the potential God placed within you. Knowing you did not continue sleeping inside comfort and ease. Not continuing to procrastinate your life away. Not continuing to shrink yourself because of fear. That's why personal growth matters so much. It doesn't just help you become more successful. It helps you become someone that when you look back, you can respect. Because in the end, everything in life comes back to the relationship between you and yourself. You can fool other people. You can appear fine to the world. But deep inside, you always know whether you're living truthfully or not. You always know whether you're moving forward or hiding. And I think one of the most powerful feelings in the world is when you begin feeling proud of yourself again. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to know that every day you're becoming a little better. Every day you're living closer to the person you want to become. That's a very different kind of confidence. Not loud, not needing to prove anything. It comes from knowing you can trust yourself. And remember this, life does not change just because you want it to. It changes when your daily standards change. When what you repeat changes, when what you tolerate changes, when your direction changes, everything outside begins changing afterward. Not overnight, but very real, like the sunrise, slow but unstoppable. So today, I want you to ask yourself one question. If the version of you 10 years from now could come back and look at your life right now, would they thank you or feel heartbroken that you gave up too soon? And maybe that is the most important question in your entire life. Because success is not something you chase, it is something you attract through the person you become. I don't know what stage of life you're in right now. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you feel like you've fallen far behind everyone else. Or maybe you're in a stage where every morning feels repetitive. But listen to me carefully. As long as you haven't given up on yourself, your life can still change direction. Never underestimate the power of small changes. One right decision repeated long enough can change an entire destiny. One promise kept to yourself can begin rebuilding the confidence you lost years ago. One day of taking your life more seriously could be the day everything begins changing. You do not need to become a perfect person overnight. You only need to stop returning to the old version of yourself that has hurt you for too long. Because in the end, life is not determined by what you say you want. It is determined by what you repeatedly do every day, what you tolerate, what you allow, what you continue doing even when it's difficult. Those are the things silently writing your future. And I hope, after this video, you begin seeing your life a little differently, taking your time more seriously, being more careful about the things you repeat, and becoming stronger about the things you no longer accept. Because there is a very powerful version of yourself waiting to be created, not through luck, but through the small choices you begin making today. If this video spoke to you, please hit like and subscribe so we can meet again on future journeys. And before ending this video, I want to ask you one thing. What is the first thing you have decided you will no longer accept in your life anymore? Leave it in the comments below. I'll read them. And always remember this quote: success is not something you chase, it is something you attract through the person you become.